What are choir bites? They are essentially little teeny things that might help your rehearsal, might help your culture. They're thought provoking. Sometimes they're sticky, just things that can be referenced like a shorthand in rehearsal once you've talked about a concept. Um, I've always had sort of a thing for analogies in rehearsal. My students would talk about them, about how, well, that was odd, but they remembered it. Um, Friends of mine would talk about it, and sometimes they would say when we would get together at convention, anyway, people have always said, you should write a book of these things. And I tried at one point doing a blog years and years ago, and I just found I was always trying to come up with the answer, and I'd write too much, or I'd agonize a lot. I did some articles for Choir Director Magazine, and that was a little bit better. But what I found is I was making a list of things to do for potential articles, and they were all just too small to really do. So I just thought, one year I came home, it was Thanksgiving break. I had a week, and I just thought, I'm gonna like tweet some things out and just kind of make little things that go out. And I refined things, and so choir bites now are basically 2,200 characters or less, which is the limit for Instagram. They're short enough that you can digest them, you can keep them, throw them away, whatever. I'm going to go through several of them today. If I confuse you or I go too fast, just hit the chat. But these are some of the ones that a lot of people have given good feedback about, and I've talked about before in previous sessions. So the first thing we have are some things for rehearsal tips. First one I call it drink it in. I deal with a lot of middle school kids and high school kids, and many of them just give the flat face, they just try to sing out of a slit. And I'm always looking for them to form vowels and make an embouchure. And I realized that if I take a water bottle, if anyone wants to join along at home, you can, right? If you go to take a drink, you are automatically preparing for that liquid by bringing your lips forward. And so I said to them one day, can we all raise a toast? Here we go. Let's prepare for that. And you can take a drink. Bonus points for the middle school if you're brave enough to do this. Watch what happens if I don't prepare my mouth to drink. And then water goes down your shirt and all the kids laugh, and it's a good time. So that's something I use in my rehearsals. Guys, seeing a lot of straight mouths, a lot of lack of shape. Let's all drink it in. That tends to help out. Next thing is a thing I call two voices. And I'm sure we all have those times when the singers are singing kind of like they talk without a lot of energy. Someone else smarter than me once said, you don't sing like you talk and you don't dance like you walk. So I wanted to try and find a way to get students to understand the difference between the physical energy and the mechanics of talking versus singing. So I did sort of a sock puppet thing. And I tell the class, and you can do this again here at home. So when I do this sock puppet, you just say, hey, how's it going? Here we go. Hey, how's it going? This hand, we're going to sing, sorry, a little allergy action there. Right? So then I'd lead the class. Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? Switching back and forth between those two things helps them understand that their body has to be ready to sing, and how we are generally very relaxed about speaking, especially there's a lot of kids today who sort of mumble and low talk. So, when the two hands come up in class, that's a reminder to them that we're going to make sure we're connecting the singing voice with activity that doesn't happen in the speaking voice. Another thing that I found in rehearsal sometimes is that if we're singing a homophonic section and it's kind of muddy or disjointed, I want to make sure it gets cleaned up. And sometimes that can be difficult to do because there's too many variables. So I came up with a thing I call the wall of sound. Well, I didn't come up with it. I stole it from barbershop. There's a lot of great stuff that you can learn from barbershopping, because great barbershopping is great singing. So a coach was coaching my barbershop chorus, and what they said was, every part has their notes, and even though we're all singing the same words in the same rhythm, but because people are leaping across different sizes, some people are going, straight across, then it affects how they're handling their consonants, their vowels, their diphthong turns. So the first thing is to take a phrase and just make it a unison phrase. So instead of peace be to you and grace from him, you just have the whole choir on unison. Peace be to you and grace from him. You can do that several times. Make sure we're all turning the diphthongs at the same time. Make sure the vowels are lasting the same amount. All the rhythms are together. It's very easy to clean up on one tone, or at least treble and bass voices and octaves. From there, you can then split it out to a multi-part chord. So in my SATB choir, I might have, F for the basses, C for the tenors, F for the altos, A above that for the sopranos. And then I do the same phrase with everybody doing just that chord. And you should still be able to hear all the turns and things happening at the same time, but now they're tuning as well and making that happen. And then the last thing to do with that is to put everybody back on their original parts. And hopefully they can maintain those timings as the notes change. Does that make sense? How are we doing, webinar chat? Well, hopefully people are still watching. So let's keep going, shall we? We are. Good. Okay. Next thing, a double thing. Now, I just will say, choirbites.com is my website, and all the things I reference here are on the website. If you feel like I haven't described it enough, please let me know. I have a double thing on vowels because I'm a vowel hawk. I love tone, love vowels. I don't know if I came up with this or not. Who knows? There's nothing new under the sun. But I started using the phrase polluted vowels. I get a lot of times choirs are singing and the vowel isn't where it needs to be. The target vowel is not where it needs to be. And sometimes it is because the choir is singing a vowel and the word has the vowel, and then afterward is a singable consonant, an L, an R, an M, right? So if you were singing the word, let's say wall, and you sing wall, wall, you can kind of hear the L in there. Sometimes to illustrate this, I will have the choir sing in slow motion. So they can feel that moment that the vowel starts to morph into that singable consonant. And then what I'll do is I'll change the word on them. So now we're not going to sing wall, we'll sing whopper. Whopper. Then I will point out the vowel is the same. The consonant on the other end is different, right? Whopper, wall. You shouldn't know what the rest of the word is until it happens, is basically how it is. So many times in rehearsal, I get great mileage out of that. The vowel isn't right. I will switch the word to be something where the vowel is followed by a non-singable consonant. And then I'll say, that's your vowel. Now, on the flip side of that, what happens if you have something singable that is on the front side of the vowel? Well, I call those vowel blossoms. You get like wah, wah, which is why the word wall is so great for this, right? It has both sides. Wall. If you don't get open, wall, wall. Another barbershopper once said, you need to insta-bang your vowels, right? Bang them open. Wall, wall. You could reverse the process. Tall or mall, ball. Pick something that pops open and replace that consonant, and there's your vowel. But get to it immediately. Ball. Make sure your mouth, bam, pops open, almost like airbag in your car, right? Straight open. Do I go into all this with the middle schoolers too? Sometimes, depends on the middle schoolers. I've had years where they're ready for that, and I just kind of go by reading the room and feeling where we are. So all of these things have been used at all the levels at some point, but just depending on where we are in the stream. I find some of this stuff is just easier for kids to grab onto because, how many times do we start thinking, okay, well, the pedagogy is, and maybe we're not meeting kids where we are. I think it's good to do things first and then circle back and say, here's why that works. And so that, I don't know. That's why a lot of choir bites work for me. It's like, well, just do that. That's what happened. After you've been successful with it, we can unpack why that is. Okay. Keep those questions coming. Another pet peeve of mine in rehearsal, and I'm sure you all will chuckle about this, is you're singing and you either get to the end of the system and there's a problem with what happens at the start of the next system, or more often something goes wrong at the page turn. And then you say, how many of you just forgot to turn the page on time? So I call this thing mind the gap. Mind the gap is essentially, well, I was in Europe and, the underground, in the London Underground, they have these signs that say mind the gap. And when you get on and off the train, this little recording plays, mind the gap, mind the gap, mind the gap. And I thought at one point, well, why do we need signs and recordings? Because can't people just keep track of where their feet are? And it's the same thing in rehearsal. We shouldn't have to say, you're going from here to here. You're going from this page to that page. But we're all humans, so we need reminders, right? So what I do is I make sure, hey, if there's a lot of staves on the page, make sure you are circling or starring which of the staves and the grand staff are yours. In the system are yours. Please make sure that you mark things you need to mark. Like for instance, sometimes you'll have a system and then it'll just jump and you'll have a whole system that's nothing but piano. That always messes kids up. To mark that. And then at the end of any given system, or to turn the page, you can either put at the bottom of the page a couple measures in, turn, or one thing I really like to do is look from one system to the next, or look from one page to the next and see what note are you going to when you cross that divide. So if you're singing a C and you're moving down to an F, write a little baby staff with an F so you can see when I move, I'm moving down to the F. When I'm crossing this page, I'm moving from F up to a C, or I'm staying on the same note, or I start the next page with a rest so that our brain is engaged as to what's going on. And like some other things I mentioned in this process, right? We're not writing it down to remember it later. We're writing it down to remember it now. Yeah, pianists do it all the time. Well, because they're smart. Phantom note. I love it, Tammy. Phantom notes. I got to keep that. So Dana, please make sure you email me a transcript of these things so I can steal righteously from all the webinar chat people and not credit them. Just kidding. If anybody has an idea that you want to get out in the world, like throw it over. I have guest contributors for choir bites. I don't really make money from this stuff other than if you buy the stuff that Alfred will talk about later. But if you just want to share ideas, come along. Bring it in. All right. Now I'm going to have to get ready for a screen share here for this next one. So please bear with me because this is a little bit of a thing. This one is called Miss It Mark It. And this goes along with, the whole, the problem is I've got to share the screen and then go into presenter mode. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. Sharing the screen. Wait, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? No. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Share screen. Here we go. And I'm going here. And I'm going to share that. And then I'm going to go into present. And then how's that? Okay. So this is called Miss It Mark It. Now, I really get frustrated in rehearsal when I point out something that needs to be done and I have to say, now write that down. Again, why should I have to say, now write that down? So I try to get this culture of miss it, mark it. Keep your pencil in your hand. Assume you need to mark things a lot. And of course, that's another story. Do you have a pencil? Why would you not have a pencil? If you don't have a pencil, that means that you think you're either going to remember everything, you're not that smart, or I'm not going to say anything helpful. I will. So have your pencil and mark everything. Mark things that I say for your section. Mark things that might pertain to other sections. If you miss something, you can just circle it for yourself, right? Like make marks all the time. Miss it, mark it. So don't wait on me to tell you. Don't wait on me to ask. Like anything, miss it, mark it. Now I was inspired because look at this slide. This next slide is great. If I can get it moved over here. There we go. Okay. One of my best students, Anna Townsend. Look at this stuff. I mean, she is marking everything, everything. Some of them, you know, are just little comments. On the soprano too, Lacey sounds so pure. Her friend Lacey sounds so great. But you can see on there, don't morph vowels, polyphonic, circle all of the F naturals, stay on top of pitch, insta bang into vowels. I mean, she was all about it. She was absolutely all about it. You can see she's done a little mind the gap there at the bottom where she's put that phantom note going to the next thing. I just think this is the way to be. Your music should look like a graphite factory because you should be active all the time. It's like authors who have dog-eared books with notes in the margins. I mean, this is where it's got to be, creating a culture where you can just see who's involved and who isn't. And it's just as simple as miss it, mark it, miss it, mark it, write it down, especially bonus points. If you're marking something that's in somebody else's part, that's awesome. I'm now going to exit the screen share maybe. Oh, here we go. Activities. We're transitioning out into activities for your classroom. Okay. I'm glad to keep this on for a second because choir dodgeball, that is a great logo. I love that so much. Let me talk about choir dodgeball after I stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Oh, let me just go back in here because I couldn't see the chat while I was screen sharing. How do I introduce the exploration of sheet music in early middle school students? I start with lyric sheets. One thing I do is I have done some lyric sheet things before, but I do take the time at the start of each year or semester or whenever I have the kids. It feels slow as all get out, but I just, you have to take a piece of music they're going to do, and I just copy the first page, and well, I copy the first page, and then I draw, you know, sort of like arrows and then lines, like what is this? And then I give that to them as a worksheet, and we go through it in class. I have an iPad that I project up to the screen so I can zoom in, zoom out, we can label things together, and that's part of the issue. So now, one thing I've done with lyric sheet that I should probably make a note about this, so I make a choir bite about it in the future. When I have students, and realizing that I don't have a pencil in front of me, when I have students who refuse to look at the music because they say, well, I can't read it, X, Y, Z. I have done this before where I have made a lyric sheet, and so they'll come in to class the next day and I say, don't get your binders, and then I just give them the lyric sheet of the song we're working on, and then I try to rehearse it from there. And then inevitably they go, well, where are we? And I'll say, well, you know, where it says across the wide Missouri. Well, there's a bunch of them. Which one? And I'll say, okay, here's your part. Well, how do I know what that is? Like, so yeah, you need those notes, don't you? Even if you thought you didn't. I have a student that frequently slides or scoops between syllables and in between. Tips for that, sure. So I talk about the the telephone lines or the power lines. You know, they have slack because if the poles have to move in the wind, the lines don't snap, but we need to pull things taut, right? So I will, sometimes I'll sing those things on a lip buzz. The other thing I will do, and we'll get to this in a moment, when I come back to phrase like Smarties, Judith Smith, this is going to come in on the phrase like Smarties when I come into that in a moment. Musicians have to share from class to class and end up in a different voice part. Interesting how it would work in my class. I mean, maybe each voice part gets a colored pencil. I don't know. So that if a tenor is marking their part in green in one class, then soprano has it in the next class and they mark it in red. Two sets of comments in webinar. There's two comment streams. I only have access to the webinar chat, but Dana will have to throw things in. Assign the scores to specific kids. Good deal. Paperless. I don't have a pencil. I know I'm the king of it. Well, I had a pencil. It was just in my pocket. I had to fish it out. Okay. Men's choir ensembles. Kids newer to singing. I'll come back to that. All right. So, okay. Moving forward to choir dodgeball. I love choir dodgeball. Now, look, some people are going to disagree with this. I'm just telling you up front because, I'm 52 now and the world has changed around me. But I remember being a kid and we'd pick up choose sides for dodgeball. And what did no one want? They did not want to be picked last, right? They wanted to be picked first. So what I do with choir dodgeball is, and again, I do this with many classes, but not all, depending on where they are. But I will pick a couple captains. I'll have them come down front during warm-ups. And when I do warm-ups for the class, they have to watch everybody up there. And I tell them, you're going to pick out your team. We're going to divide the choir in half, and you get to pick teams. Yes, and the feed loop chat, I can see them even after the session. Absolutely, I will answer any and all things after the session, and you are welcome to reach out to me at any point. Dana, if you want to give them my school email in the chat or whatever, I'm happy to. That's fine. I'll happily answer questions and such. All right. So anyway, so choir dodgeball. So watch everybody during the warm-ups and get ready to pick your team. So then I will say, okay, so let's say it's an SATB choir. All right, so now you're going to pick your sopranos, and they alternate, Captain A, B, alternating among sopranos till everyone's been picked, then altos, then tenors, then basses. Then, okay, team A, you're going to this side of the risers, team B to this side of the risers. If we're worried about being picked last, you can wait, and then when you get down to the last 3 kids, just say, the last 4 to 6 kids, just say pick 2 at once or pick 3 at once, so you don't have to get it down to the last. And then what I do is we'll do a run through of something. We're all singing it all together. Then I'll say to the captains, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to work with your team. You can move them where you want. You can tell them things you want them to know. And then we're going to sing it. Group A sings it, Group B sings it, and we'll have points. And then maybe we do a different part of the song, same thing. So you could set it up to, maybe you break the piece into thirds and, best out of 3 for the song wins. And, what do you win? You win putting your folder away first. You win, or cheesy prizes. Hey, let me a prize. And the kids will laugh, because you have a box of paper clips. You want a paper clip on your way out. Get your paper clip, winners. So choir dodgeball is a lot of fun. I have another thing called pick a card. Pick a card, any card. So flip through. I got frustrated one time about rehearsal because kids were just being kind of down, whatever. I thought it'd be fun. So I took index cards and I would write in, 10-minute rehearsal on this song, 5 minutes of rehearsal on this song, run a warm up, sight read for 5 minutes, whatever. And I would just shuffle and then pick one. And that's what we do. Marcy's got a good thing in the chat about last few kids to go whatever team they want. So that's good. I would do that. And the kids thought that was fun. We're still going to do the same stuff. It's just kind of random when it happens. And then people are like, what is that? I evolved over time. Instead of cards, what I did was I bought some poker chips and I just wrote on all the white chips, SR for sight reading, RR for rhythm reading, REH for rehearsal. Sometimes I'd put VID for video. You can control what's in the mix. And so if I have a chip day on Friday, maybe I'll have 5 each of sight reading, rhythm reading, rehearsal, whatever, and then 2 videos. Or sometimes there'll be all white chips and I'll throw a blue one in there. And if you pick the blue one, then the kids get to vote on what they want to do or whatever. So just some randomization. Another way to do it is to get fake, a toy dice or die. A friend of mine would do that. So he'd write on the board, 1 equals sight read, 2 equals rhythm read, 3 equals rehearse this piece, 4 is rehearse that piece, and then you just roll the dice and whatever one it is. So just randomization of rehearsal in any form. Kat, I hope Chip Day is working well for you. You can do the wheel randomizer online. Absolutely. Good job, Grace. So sometimes I feel like maybe I need to go back and update my choir bite to make it just be like randomization, because there's many ways to randomize, but I'm too lazy, and since I make no money off of changing it, I'll move on to something else. I got to write some new choir bites. COVID kind of took the wind out of choir bites, really, because I wasn't rehearsing, so I had no thoughts. Okay, if you're focused and you know it, clap your hands. So at the middle school, the most, but at some of the high school choirs, when they're younger kids or inexperienced, or they're just chatty, or they're just full of energy, I needed ways to pull focus. So I would start at the beginning of class, and let's see if like this can happen. Let's see. Can you tell what I'm doing is I'm tossing this item up, and then it disappears, and then it comes back, because I just don't want to have to turn my background on and off, right? Throwing the ball into the air, and here we go. So I just say, when I catch the ball, clap, and I do it, and I won't go on until I get 3 in a row that are good. And then I can be like, no, it's comedic. Yeah, get very excited or very comedic about missing it. The other thing I do is, if I drop the ball, they all have to applaud and go, yay! Now, this is a choir bite I haven't written. This is a little tangent. Guy was doing an in-service at my school. He was a juggler. And when we walked into the in-service, we all got one of those, juggling for dummies kits. And he said, here's how we're going to do it. Everybody get out one thing. And I go, okay. Now, I know how to juggle, but everybody else didn't. He said, we're going to learn how to juggle. So the first thing you need to do is this. Take the juggling bag, drop it on the floor. Thump. Now everybody do this. Yay! Everybody was really puzzled. He said, you're not going to learn to juggle without dropping these all the time. So you might as well just celebrate that it happens, because that's the fact that you're doing it means you're getting closer to getting better at it. So that's kind of the fun thing, right? So once I tell them, like, look, if you're going to tackle choral music, which is difficult, the number one thing we need is focus, and everyone does the same thing at the same time. So this is the simplest thing, that is everybody doing the same thing at the same time. And if you can't do that, we're going to struggle with everything else. So you got to do it 3 times in a row before we move on to the rehearsal. And they're in charge of that. And of course, it gets better and easier over time. But if there's a rehearsal where they start to mentally slide, you can just pick it up and do that, right? And you can even do, this is the, treble hand, this is the bass hand. You get 2 balls going. Or if you know how to juggle, you can do 3, right? Sopranos, altos, boys in the middle school, when you do it can be really funny. So, but if things are going sideways, like just while you're talking, okay, we're going to go to page 5 and turn to that and see who picks up on it, right? It's just kind of a fun cultural thing. All right. Down in front, an exercise I have called down in front. This is the do you see what I see? Because a lot of times kids don't understand why you're saying the things you say, because they don't see the choir like you see the choir. So I will pick one kid from each section and have them stand in the front. And I said, just watch the choir while I'm rehearsing. Don't look at your music. Don't sing. Just watch them. Find me who is doing the best job in each section. And they watch, and then I go, all right, who's doing the best job? Julie. Okay, that's great. Everybody names off their best person, and then it flips. And then after a few times with that, I might say, okay, now this time, find out who's doing the best job. But everybody needs a turn down front. So, who hasn't come down? Just pick someone to come down. So you can credit who did a great job, but also just have everybody take a turn down front. But you take time at some point after a few days of doing that to say, you who were down front, what did you notice? Oh, I noticed. That's a lot of erasing that needs to be done at the end of the year. Alfred can answer the question about the legality to make copies, but I will just say that it might be a lot of erasing, but you don't have to do it. They have to do it. So you just give them some time, or maybe that's the last assignment before you leave, right? Hey, guess what? The quarter ends this week. We just had our concert. Sometime between now and Friday, you got to erase all your stuff. Ba-dum-bum. Okay. Love down in front. All right. Another screen share, which, sorry, will just be a little bit awkward. But I got to show you this picture. I've been meaning to clean it up, but I haven't. So this is like my Janko drawing from an iPad. Okay, there you go. So silence is golden. I have had many times where my voice just gets shot because of allergies, because of overuse, because of whatever, and it's hard to run rehearsal. Sometimes I do this even if my voice isn't shot because I just don't tell them. What I have found is when I run a silent rehearsal, kids do not talk much at all. They just stare at you like it's odd. You know, I'm doing things that don't require them to be quiet to take it in because they have to look at me or look at the screen, but they get quiet nonetheless. So I either like will project this picture on the board or I'll write some of these things on the board because then I can just get my laser pointer and I can point to things, you know, like pointing to positions of sound for placement. I can point to across the bottom, there's the sections and groupings. So I can point to that dot that says sopranos and altos together, or alto tenor, tenor bass, or everybody, or just an individual section. You know, some basic stuff there needs work. Super awesome. And then numbers, page 3, measure 4, beat 2. Dynamics, et cetera, et cetera. You can do it any way you want. I've seen some people who will type into a Google Doc that's shared up to the screen. Everything I do is either on a MacBook or an iPad shared up to an Apple TV on the screen, but they can just type what they want to do. I've even gone so far sometimes as to type it so they can't see it and then have the computer voice read it over the speaker. But I think silent rehearsals are really neat. And so you can read up on that one or play around with it a little bit yourself, but I just find it fun to do silent rehearsals. Pardon my allergy sniffle. Okay. Can we talk? All right. So if you're sitting at a computer, right? I'm going to put this in the chat. Okay, here it is. Coughativity.com. You could pull it up now if you want. It's a website. They used to have an app, but that's unfortunately been nixed. But it's a website, and they have recordings, several different kinds, but they all just amount to ambient noises from coffee shops. And the theory behind it, so they claim, is that the human brain functions the best when there is a low level of ambient noise. So it's hard to study when there's a lot of noise and it's very distracting because it's loud, or there's things that pull your attention like listening to music. It's also hard to study or work when it's dead quiet because it's unsettling, which is why a lot of people like to go to the Starbucks and do their work or wherever. Interesting. I've tried it myself in my office. It does kind of work for me sometimes, which is nice. But I started using this when I'd get really frustrated at middle school kids who do not want to stop talking. So what I did was one day I pulled it up and I just kind of had it softly on the overhead speakers while the kids were coming in, and they were talking and they were pretty loud. So I turned it up a little bit. They couldn't hear it, right? Because they were still talking. So then we'd go to start warm-ups and I would go really softly. I'd play the piano and I would say things like, don't forget to start on piano. Make sure you lift your eyebrows. And they couldn't hear me because as they started to sing, that ambient noise makes it hard to hear. So I wait for a while and you can see him getting all puzzled and whatever. And then finally some kid would say, Mr. McDonald, like, I can't hear you. And then I stop and then I go over and turn off the coughativity and I say, oh, I'm sorry. Is all that talking noise making it hard for you to work? So it's just kind of a funny moment. But yeah, so what'll happen is if they ever just start talking too much and they won't quiet down, I'll just turn it on. And then they're like, oh, okay, we get it. You know, it's especially good at middle school, but I've done it with the high school kids before too. I love coughativity.com. And I like to work in the office with it sometimes. Okay, the next few things we're going to talk about are about phrasing. We're in the home stretch and moving fast. Simple one. I do this with my choirs. Repeat after me. Long notes grow. Say it. Again, long notes grow. Say it. Okay. Long notes grow. I mean, one of the things we have to do when we have long notes is do something with them. They're so boring if they don't grow. And grow in what way? They grow louder, they grow softer, they grow in intensity, they grow with breath. There's a number of ways they can grow, but they have to grow. They have to do something. I like grow rather than change because grow implies some sort of positivity. And it's easy to just say long notes grow. So whenever, because what is a sound that doesn't grow? Patient is dead. I mean, that when you sing in a tune, right? You're doing some Whitaker piece or some Renaissance piece, and that's how you sing it. Patient is dead. Long notes have to grow. That's just a short little thing because you can always say, "What do we do, kids? Long notes grow." Another one that ties in with this is what I call whole notes are like potatoes. So what does that mean? Well, potatoes, like who eats just boiled potatoes with nothing on them? Not many people, right? A whole note just looks like a little potato, and like a potato, the more interesting you want it to be, the more stuff you have to do with it. I'm going to put butter on it and sour cream and salt and pepper and cheese and bacon and chives, right? So if you have these whole notes, again, you have to do something to them to make them interesting. They're not inherently interesting. Melodic lines and running melismas of 16th notes or 8th notes are inherently interesting. Whole notes are not inherently interesting. So you have to do something to them like potatoes. And this sticks. This is a good sticky one because when you just look at the page after you've heard this, you're like, look at all those potatoes. There they are. Some kids will be like, okay, well, like, whole notes are like big baking potatoes, like big russet potatoes, and half notes are like, the smaller potatoes, and, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just goofy stuff. Okay. I told you to come back to phrase like Smarties. So this is the whole, like, what do you do if you're sliding between notes and such? So, can you picture a pack of Smarties, right? It's, those in the candies in the tube, like little discs of candy, and then there's a twist on each end, right? A lot of times kids will sing phrases and they have a beginning, middle, and end to every note that are not connected, right? So, peace be to you and grace from him. And it just sounds like little individual notes. They sing note to note. They don't sing phrases. That would be like lining up a bunch of little peppermints so that the little twisty parts of the plastic wrapper touch, and you see the little pockets of candy, but there's spaces in between. Smarties, the breath is the twisty part of the plastic, and then the notes are all the discs stuck together in the middle that are separate, but they're touching. And then the cutoff is the other twisty. Does that make sense? I hope. I think in the Alfred thing that we sell, we call it "Take It to the Bank." It's like a roll of quarters because we can't use Smarties and we'll get sued. But I call it a phrase like Smarties, and you're a smarty for doing it. But the trick behind that is another meme or another little short choir bite I have that says consonants are never endings. They are only beginnings. They begin words, begin syllables, or they begin the rest that follows the phrase, right? So it's not peace be to you. I don't know why I'm using "E'en so Lord Jesus quickly come" by Paul Mans today, but I am. So it's not peace be to you. It's peace be to you and grace from. So the ending consonants get moved to be part of the beginning of the next thing. This turns into like when you're spinning a bicycle tire. Peace be to you and grace. That way, if you're bending the tempo or if you change the tempo, the vowel has to take up all that space until the next attack. Another choir bite I have that says, your responsibility to the note does not end at the attack. And yes, eliding words together, correct. So, all right. How many do I have left? Oh, here we go. So we have one called, what shape? Oh, I'm going to run out of time. I'm skipping that one. Very quick ones. I have one that says, if you can imitate any of these voices, try imitating a great singer. There's pictures of Kermit, Bill Clinton, Darth Vader, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody, hurry, get to the chopper, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. But they will not imitate, Andrea Bocelli. They will not imitate Renee Fleming. But you could try. If you can imitate anybody, then you could try imitating a good singer. I have one called fire hose or garden hose. Garden hoses are tubes, whether there's water in them or not, which is what we should be. Fire hoses are flat until water goes through them. So do you wait until you're blowing air to go, or like the structure is there regardless. I'm skipping over some of these. Layer them in, a great exercise, which is you take maybe 3 people in a section that are pretty good, and you have them sing in front of the chorus, and then you pick someone to join. You're like, now make sure you match them, right? And you just do that one person at a time. And what will happen is people are very aware, like, I don't want to mess it up, and what you'll find is it stays the same. It stays good all the time, and then when you're done, you can just add like the last few people again, and then like it's better than it was before because they're on the hot seat without being on the hot seat individually. Love that. So check that one out on the website, Layer Them In. Skipping that. A couple other things. Always on recording. I have a thing on my iPhone called Heard. There's one for Android as well. It is this app. See if you can see that. And what it does is it records in a buffer up to 5 minutes of what's happening. And anytime in rehearsal I can just stop it and then I can play it. So then I go and I play it. And you can't hear it because it's playing through my Bluetooth headphones. Excuse me, 1 second. There we go. There we go. Let me try that again. There we go. You can see that. And what it does is it records in a buffer up to 5 minutes of what's happening. And anytime in rehearsal I can just stop it. I used to tell kids, I'm going to record this run through and then we're going to listen to it. But then, of course, they'd brace themselves. So if I just had that running on the iPad, at any point, if they sing anything good or bad, I can just go boop and then run over and play it. And then I don't have a bunch of audio files saved I have to delete. It's called Heard. It's awesome. The one in Android is called Record the Past. So that's something to try. I use a decibel meter.
Thank you again, Brody. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.